Somewhere right now, in a list nobody outside the industry ever reads, a single address that has done nothing wrong all year is quietly being added to a block list. Yesterday, it loaded 100 ordinary pages and every site trusted it without a second thought. Today, a few too many requests went out through it, a login was hammered a little too hard, a pattern looked a little too mechanical, and a system far away made a quiet decision. From this moment on, doors that used to open for that address will hesitate, then close. Nobody told the address. Nobody told whoever is using it. It just stopped working, and the only clue is that everything got a little harder. Down. An address is a reputation. The thing to understand first is that an address on the internet is not just a number that says where to send a reply. Over time, it becomes a name, a small reputation that other machines remember. Every site it touches forms an opinion about it, and those opinions get written down, shared, and traded. That reputation is the real currency here. A clean address is one that no system has anything bad to say about. A burned address is one that too many systems have quietly decided to distrust. The number itself never changes. What changes is the story attached to it, and that story is built almost entirely by strangers. The address has no say in its own reputation. Every site it visits, every login it touches, every form it fills is a witness whose impression gets recorded somewhere. An address is the sum of testimony given about it by machines that never asked its side of things. How an address starts clean, every address starts its life with no history at all. When a provider hands out a block of fresh numbers, those numbers carry no story, good or bad. They are blank. And a blank slate is valuable because trust on the internet defaults to caution. And an address with no marks against it gets the benefit of the doubt. So a clean address loads pages without friction. It signs up for things without extra checks. It moves through the web the way a quiet, ordinary user moves. Invisible because nothing about it stands out. That frictionless feeling is exactly the thing that gets used up. What burning actually means. Burning an address is not one dramatic event. It is an accumulation. Each time the address does something that looks a little off, a system somewhere lowers its opinion by a notch, and those notches add up across many systems that never talk directly but all watch the same behavior. At some threshold, the address crosses from trusted to suspect. Now sites start adding friction. A captcha appears where there was none. A request that used to return data returns a polite refusal. A sign-up that used to go through gets held for review. The address has not been banned everywhere at once. It has just quietly slipped down enough lists that the modern web stops giving it the easy path. Solinis terpenam. The burn is rarely announced. There is no error that says your reputation is low. The address simply meets more resistance everywhere it goes, and the person using it is left to guess why everything suddenly takes 3 tries instead of 1. That ambiguity is deliberate, because a defender who tells you exactly why you were flagged is teaching you how to avoid the flag next time. So the system stays quiet, and the burn reveals itself only as a slow, frustrating fall. The traffic that does the damage. So what actually burns an address? Mostly it is volume and shape. One home connection has a natural rhythm to its day. A few hundred requests spread across normal hours. When far more traffic than that pours through a single address all day, aimed at unrelated services, the shape stops looking human. It is rarely a single crime that does it. It is the relentlessness. A real person does not check the same site 400 times a minute, sign up for 50 accounts in an hour, or fill the same form with mechanical timing. Defenders do not need to prove the address is automated. They just need to notice that whatever is behind it stops behaving like one person, and the reputation starts sliding from there. How block lists get built? A lot of this reputation lives in things called block lists, which are exactly what they sound like. Shared rosters of addresses that have misbehaved. Some are run by security companies, some by volunteer projects, some by the big platforms purely for their own use. Each one watches for abuse, spam, attacks, fraud, and writes down the addresses responsible. The important part is that these lists are not isolated. A site you have never heard of can subscribe to a list built from complaints gathered everywhere else. So an address that earned its bad name attacking one corner of the internet can find itself distrusted on sites that never saw it do anything at all. The punishment travels far ahead of the address. There are different flavors of these lists too. Some are narrow and surgical, listing only addresses caught sending spam or running attacks. Others are broad and categorical, listing entire ranges known to belong to hosting providers or proxy networks, on the simple logic that ordinary people rarely browse from inside a server farm. An address can land on a list for what it did, or just for the category it appears to belong to, and getting off the first kind is far easier than escaping the second. How reputation spreads. This is the quiet engine under the whole system. Reputation propagates. One operator flags an address. That flag flows into a shared feed. That feed is consumed by hundreds of others. And within hours, a verdict reached in one place is enforced in 1,000 places that simply trusted the verdict. It spreads sideways too, by neighborhood. Addresses are handed out in blocks, and if a whole block earns a bad name, an address inside it can be treated with suspicion just for the company it keeps. A brand new address can arrive already tainted, not by anything it did, but by where it lives. On the internet, your neighbors are part of your reputation whether you like it or not. Why operators rotate? Once you understand that an address is a wearing asset, rotation makes obvious sense. An operator running a lot of traffic knows each address has a budget of trust, and that budget gets spent with use. So instead of riding one address until it dies, they spread the load across many and move between them. The goal is to keep any single address below the threshold where it gets noticed. It is the same instinct as not wearing out one tool when you have a whole drawer, but rotation only delays the arithmetic, it does not break it. Every address in the pool is still aging, still accumulating a story, still drifting toward the day a system somewhere decides it has seen enough, and then rotation has its own tale. The same handful of accounts hopping from one address to another, all behaving in lockstep, is itself a pattern that a defender watching the wider view can see. Spreading thin hides any single address, but it leaves a fingerprint across the whole pool. So the very move that protects each address can give away the operation, which is why the cat and mouse never settles into a clean answer for either side. The cooldown, where addresses heal, here is the part that surprises people. A burned address is not dead forever. Reputation has a memory, but that memory fades. Most of these systems weight recent behavior far more heavily than old behavior, because an address that misbehaved a year ago and has been quiet since is probably under new management or simply back to normal use. So an address that goes quiet can cool down. The complaints age out, the listings expire, the shared feeds drop entries that have not reoffended, and slowly the address climbs back toward neutral. Nobody pardons it. It just stops being the most recent thing on anyone's mind, and on the internet, being forgotten is a kind of forgiveness. How long that takes is not fixed. A light flag from a minor offense might fade in days. A serious listing on a widely shared feed can take weeks or months to clear, and some categorical listings, the ones that mark a whole range as hosting or proxy space, may never lift at all because they described what the address is, not what it did. The cooldown works best for addresses whose only problem was recent behavior, and barely at all for addresses born into the wrong neighborhood. Reborn under new ownership, the faster path back is reassignment. Addresses are a finite, managed resource, and they get returned, reclaimed, and handed out again constantly. The connection that gave up an address last month may be using a different one today, and that old number now belongs to someone entirely new. So a burned address can be reborn simply by changing hands. The history that haunted it belonged to whoever held it before, and a fresh holder inherits whatever reputation is left, good or bad. This is also why an ordinary person can suddenly find their brand new home address treated as suspect. They did nothing, they just moved into a number whose previous tenant left a mess that has not finished fading. The economics of clean addresses, now you can see why clean addresses cost money. Scarcity plus usefulness equals price, and clean reputation is both scarce and extremely useful. An address nobody distrusts can do things a burned one cannot, so the clean ones command a premium and the burned ones get discounted or discarded. This turns reputation into an economy with a constant churn. Fresh addresses are acquired, used until their trust runs thin, wrested or recycled, and brought back. There is a whole quiet market in the difference between a number that works and a number that has been spent. And the price of an address at any moment is really just the market's guess about how much trust it has left. And like any market, it rewards whatever is hardest to obtain. A number that looks like a real phone on a real carrier is worth more than a number that looks like a server in a rented rack, because the first borrows the trust the second can never buy. The price tag on an address is, in the end, a price tag on its believability. That is the quiet logic that sorts the entire supply, and it is exactly the thread we pick up in the next video. It's constant recycling, step back, and the pattern is a loop. Clean addresses enter, get used, get burned, go quiet or change hands, cool off, and re-enter as clean again. The same finite pool of numbers cycles through reputation over and over, like a deck being shuffled and dealt and shuffled again. Nothing is ever truly created or destroyed in this loop. An address is just a slot that holds a reputation for a while, loses it, and gets a new one. The supply of numbers is limited, but the supply of fresh starts is, in practice, renewable, because trust is something the system keeps letting addresses earn back. Why defenders love reputation? From the defensive side, reputation is a beautiful signal precisely because it is so hard to fake. An address cannot simply declare itself trustworthy. It has to accumulate a clean history over real time, through real behavior, and there is no shortcut that manufactures that history convincingly. That is the whole strength of it. Anyone can spoof a label, copy a fingerprint, or mimic a browser, but you cannot fast-forward a reputation. History is expensive to build and cheap to check, which is exactly the property defenders want. A single reputation lookup, almost free to perform, quietly carries the weight of everything an address has ever done. The war that never ends, so this is the shape of the whole thing. Defenders lean on reputation because history is hard to fake. Operators answer by treating addresses as a renewable resource, spending them, resting them, recycling them, always sourcing fresh ones to replace the spent. Neither side wins because the loop itself never resolves. Every clean address is a temporary advantage walking toward its own expirations. Every burned address is a future clean one waiting out its memory or its next owner. The addresses keep cycling, the lists keep updating, the reputations keep rising and falling, and the war goes on the way it always has, quietly, address by address, with nobody ever firing a shot. If this is the kind of thing you want to understand from the inside, subscribe and follow the rabbit hole with us. We take the systems that quietly run the modern web and pull them apart one at a time. No products, no pitch, just the machinery. Next time we sort the addresses themselves into their three great families. Why traffic from a data center is treated like a stranger, why a home connection is trusted, and why an address on a real mobile network is the rarest, most valuable kind of all. That is data center versus residential versus mobile, why one is gold, and it is the next door down the hall.